on Zoom. And secondly, I have to thank Dr. Joseph Bowman and Dr. Pamon Pangomot Pamon and the SEADOM office for organizing this. Without them, it would be impossible for us at all to meet together like this. First, my name is Anothai Nithibhon, and I'm from Princess Kalayatana Institute of Music. And today I have the honor to introduce our speakers and panelists from the session's Tradition in Transitions today. First, just tell you briefly about who are these three people that we will be hearing from them. So first is Professor LaVerne David de la Pena, who's the Dean of the University of the Philippines College of Music, and also the Director of the UP Center for Ethnomusicology. He received his PhD in ethnomusicology from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And he has conducted extensive field work in the northern Philippines and in the southern part of Luzon. Some of us might not know that he actually has also earned both bachelor and master degree in compositions and regularly presents his new works for various media. And from all his work, he has inspired many of his fellows, myself included, and a lot of young people in the importance of why we need to take care of our own cultures and people in the region. So it's really an honor for us that you're presenting here about your projects in UP, Van. And the second person, our speakers, is Ajahn Anant Narkkong, Professor Ajahn Anant Narkkong, who is a prominent ethnomusicology. And I'm very proud to say that he's my teacher and my lifelong mentor, who is a very well-known locally in Southeast Asia and also abroad. He has finished his study. After he finished his study in Thailand, he has received a scholarship to study at SOAS, at University of London. And since his graduation, he has been extremely active in collecting, teaching, communicating the stories of Southeast Asian music to the wider world. And he was also involved in many music making activities that promote music from our regions. You would hear more about his musical stories later on. And coming to our third guest is Harold Andre Cruz Santos, who has graduated in the Asian music and musicology from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He is, very proud to say, he's a multi-instrumentalist who performs the Mindanao Kulintan, Cordillera gongs and bamboo, Javanese gamelan, Javanese koto, and jazz piano. Moreover, he also composed music for films, theater, and contemporary dance. So what an amazing young guy he is. He's now performing and leading the groups such as Yon, the Benue District, Up Tukma, South Samba Fusion, No Level Joe, Cortitos, One Asia Classical Orchestra, and also ASEAN Youth Ensemble. And that's how we met. What I like that he has described himself as someone who is constantly driven by the desire to finding the perfect balance of tradition and innovation of his generations. And I vouch that this is perfectly true. So we'll be hearing from him afterwards. So let's welcome you all to the sessions today. And if I can pass our microphone to our first speakers, Professor LaVerne de la Pena. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Anothai. Let me share my screen. This will take a little. Let me see now. And can you tell me if you can see the screen?
Perfect. Thank you, Professor.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. So the presentation is titled Traditional Music Pedagogy at the University of the Philippines College of Music, and as described in the pub mats that you saw, this presentation discusses the teaching and learning of traditional Philippine, Asian, and world music in an institution molded after the Western conservatory schools over a century ago. The program, the Asian music program, was introduced by Jose Maceda, who applied the concept of bi-musicality, which was espoused by his teacher, Mantelhood. This concept proposed that competence in various musical traditions can be acquired, just like native and foreign languages. For Maceda, the primary motivation was the rediscovery of cultural identity, which was then obscured by centuries of colonial subjugation. Okay, so today I will probably give you a tour of a brief history of the College of Music, but that includes also a look back into the history of the Philippines as a nation. In fact, this year, we are commemorating the 500th anniversary of the arrival of Ferdinand Magellan, accomplishing, therefore, the circumnavigation of the world and the so-called discovery of the Philippines, which resulted in a 300-year colonization of the islands and the introduction of Christianity. Using the sword and the cross, this was a two-pronged civilizing mission where devotion to Catholic faith was equated with loyalty to the Spanish crown. Not only was the imposition of the white man's religion involving the teaching of church doctrine, but it also intended to transform the natives into their cultural likeness. So 300 years of Spanish rule resulted in the transformation of every facet of the Filipino life, the life of the Filipino. A populace resulting now into a population or a populace detached from its roots and alienated from its neighbors in the region. So whatever native forms that survive this systematic onslaught in the 300 years of the rule of Spain, this will be again subjected to further a second wave of offensive dealt by the American period beginning at the turn of the 20th century and lasting into around 1935 or so. Okay. Towards the end of the Spanish rule, because of the revolution, there was a rising consciousness of nationalism and sovereignty among the literati in the Philippines. The American government then needed to seduce the hearts and minds of the Filipino through a policy which they called benevolent assimilation. There was this promise that ultimately national independence will be granted by America. It was like a carrot on a stick, provided that the Filipinos can prove to Uncle Sam that we are able to govern ourselves. So Uncle Sam played the role of the dedicated mentor, I should say, to the hapless child. Education then became the key to uplifting citizenry towards free participation among the advanced human civilizations of the world. So for the first time, public schools were established all over the country. And the state, the colonial state, the Commonwealth, took over what was once the sole responsibility of the church during the Spanish era. In 1908, the University of the Philippines was established by the Philippine Commission as the state university. So modeled after American universities, UP, as we call it, was tasked with providing, quote, advanced instruction in literature, philosophy, the sciences and arts, and to give professional and technical training to every qualified student regardless of age, sex, nationality, religious belief, and political affiliation, end of quote. 8 years after that, the University Conservatory of Music was established through the Senate Act number 2623, an act appropriating 10,000 pesos for the establishment and maintenance of a conservatory of music. So under this act, the Conservatory of Music was established, and it fell under the administration of the College of Liberal Arts. And classes were opened on September 4, 1916 in a rented building somewhere in Manila, as you see in the slide now. It was founded with the goal of training aspiring musicians in performance, composition, and music education. It was an open invitation to Filipino musicians who, after years of struggle, especially towards the end of the Spanish rule, was somehow molded and internalized through servitude. And it allows them to elevate their talent from the point of view of the Westerner and craft to a level at par with the idealized Western standards. This was the seduction of the Filipino artist. Two main offerings, a special course on general music education and a regular 4-year solo artist course with a specific performance specialization was on the program. The first 3 directors appointed to lead the conservatory were all whites: Wallace George from 1916 to 1920, Robert Schofield from 1920 to 1924, both of them Americans, and the third, an Austrian, Alexander Lipai, 1924 to 1930. From the period of 1920s to the 1950s, we saw then the shaping of what I call the Philippine art music imaginary. This was heavily influenced by the nationalist movement or movement in musical nationalism that has begun to spread in Europe. So the formula was simple: utilize folk songs as thematic material for Western vocal and instrumental forms, just like concerto, sonata, art song. And these folk songs, Filipino folk songs, of course, were hybrid Hispanized products of the Spanish colonial period, something we say, we categorize as the lowland tradition. Pictured here is the composer Nicanor Abelardo, who became a key figure in this period. He also, or the college now also, the building of the college is named after him. After the war, or prior to the war and soon after, there was a rising interest in indigenous music and dances. By intense nationalism, probably also in a way influenced by the Japanese philosophy of Asia for Asians. Okay? So in the University of the Philippines in the 1950s, the president of the university sent out teams to gather data all over the Philippines, this time into far-flung areas beyond the so-called lowland folk traditions, to document folk songs, to document songs and dances. And this became material for new compositions and folk songs, editions for the public schools. It also became the so-called inspiration for new choreographies for folkloric dance troupes. So there was this mad rush to collect all of this with the idea that they will soon disappear. But the idea was it has to be refined by these academics and learned artists to be able to be presented to the rest of the world. In the 1960s, the conservatory became a full-fledged college and began to offer baccalaureate programs. This Bachelor of Music required general education or liberal education courses. This was the time that Jose Maceda became the chair of what was then called the Asian Music Department. So at this time, going away from the idea of nationalism as, you know, the Hispanized folk, lowland folk culture, it was looking towards the far-flung areas where pre-Hispanic traditions might have survived. And these pre-Hispanic traditions would be the ones closest to those practiced by the neighboring countries. So Jose Maceda did his PhD. He was a concert pianist before that, but became interested in ethnomusicology and did his dissertation at the UCLA, where he met Mantelhood and became his teacher. And Mantelhood espoused this idea of bimusicality. Sorry for that. Sorry for the what's on the slide now. I forgot to remove that. Bimusicality basically is the idea that you can acquire 2 different musical languages. It's like having your native tongue and learning a second language. And the idea was that in a conservatory, in a Western conservatory setting where you have piano, voice, violin majors, and so on, they should as well be able to experience, at least somehow learn the basics of traditional music. And for this, he recruited various teachers from outside the academe, many of them not having the proper credentials to teach, the usual credentials to teach in a university setting. Agamayo, Professor Agamayo Butokan was a native of Maguindanao. And in 1968, Jose Maceda would recruit her to teach Maguindanaoan Kulintang. Okay? And of course, she stayed, and up to now, she's still teaching, having produced thousands and thousands probably of students. So foremost for the challenges that faced her as an instructor was the rigidity of the academic setting compared to how she learned it in her community. So Butokan taught her students once a week for 30 minutes, each session. She realized then that when she met her students after a week, they would have already forgotten what the session was the previous week. Apart from that, her student kept on asking her how they can practice on their own without her presence. And the only way to do this, she thought, was to somehow come up with a notation. And on her own, through trial and error, she was able to develop a notation for Kulintang music, which became very instrumental in the teaching of Kulintang in the department, in the college. So the existence of these pieces written on paper allowed the students to approach the study of Kulintang in the manner that they would study piano or violin or voice. In the 1970s, the program, the Asian music, expanded in the college. The school began to offer as minor or elective courses, traditional music. And in Philippines, they began to offer Kalinga, that's from the north, Gong and Bamboo Ensemble. And from the south, Maguindanao, Kulintangan. Students are, whatever their major were required to enroll in this. And sooner and later, much later, the rondalia from the lowland was also adapted. And for Asia, Javanese gamelan, Chinese nangquan, and later seichu, Japanese koto, Indian sitar, and Korean sambal nori would also be offered. It was an interesting story how the Javanese gamelan was acquired in the 1960s. Several of the faculty of the professors went on concert tour in Jakarta. And the governor then was so pleased with the performance and asked them, what would you want in return? And Jose Maceda nudged the chair of the piano department and told him, ask for a gamelan. The professor did not even know what a gamelan was. And so he said, a gamelan. And so they all laughed. It was a funny joke. But then several months later came the crates of Javanese gamelan. And so that was the beginning of the gamelan program. Pretty soon, the Indonesian government sent a teacher as well. In the late 90s, an actual 4-year diploma in Asian music was offered. The diploma would lead to a Bachelor of Music in musicology. This has then been revised with the abolition of the diploma programs, and now we have the Associate in Arts music degree, which also can lead to a Bachelor of Music. These programs are quite difficult to maintain. Hiring of instructors in a university setting that requires certain credentials takes a lot of effort to justify to university administrators. Acquiring instruments is also very difficult. Not only are the instruments hard to source, but they could also be very expensive. But more than that, the government system, because UP being a state institution, is governed by very restrictive procurement laws. So it's very hard, even if you find the funds to buy a set of koto instruments, for example, it's much easier just to look for a donor than to acquire it yourself. And of course, there's still ongoing opposition from within among the old faculty who are still in that old worldview, old view of the conservatory. Requiring traditional music courses to their students just means taking away credits that could have gone into their majors, right? And the question is, will they be able to use their knowledge of koto anyway, or gamelan, when they become, when they strive to become concert pianists, or at least try to pass auditions in universities abroad for further studies? So we realized that even if you employ traditional music as instructors, and we did that, we employed Agamayo Butokan, we employed a janitor from Kalinga, a refugee from China who was living in Chinatown to teach Narkkong music and so on. We realized that even if you employ these traditional musicians, the moment you put them in a university in academic setting, the process becomes academified, I should say. It is restricted to a specific number of credits and schedule, exams, grades, and performances, very different from the natural community setting. So a few adjustments had to be tried. Professor Butokan herself has redesigned her classroom. So instead of the usual one-on-one session, she opened it and allowed other students to come in. And even though it's not their schedule yet, they played with the student and the teacher, thereby somehow copying the natural setting, how it might be taught, approaching how it might be taught in the traditional community. Also, we decided that it's very important for the students, even though they have learned kulintang or flat gongs in the classroom, they should be able to learn it in the field. So we sent them out in the field. They are required to have field experience in field methods and learn from the community practitioners. Finally, we also required them a practicum towards the end of their program, which requires them to receive training from a teacher that does not belong to the university, but somebody from the community. They are supposed to have 30 hours, a total of 30-hour sessions outside the school. And at the end, they have to produce a project with the help of the instructor. So what does this all amount to? What you see here are 3 posters, 2 from recitals of our Asian music majors. The other one is a typical concert now that that puts together on stage Western music and Japanese music, Schumann X Sawai. The presence of traditional music in the academy has somehow allowed it to reach wider audiences, not only here, but also abroad. Did it allow us to find a true identity in the process? I'm not sure about that. Perhaps the true self is what you decide to become. And experience with your roots, however distant, somehow allows you better informed choices. What about bimusicality? Well, of course, it's a more complex than what could be said. It's very hard to gain competence in a certain language within a very limited time and in a very restricted environment, such as the classroom. However, we are hopeful that it has produced students with open minds that somehow, wherever they end up, whatever career they finally choose, that this openness to new worlds allows them to become more innovative, whatever they encounter in their career paths. So that's it. Thank you very much. This is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor Van. So I think we have come quite a long way, isn't it? From like 1916 with the idea in 1920 that empowering all this folk music to the ideas of Professor Jose Maceda. And you weren't wrong about my musicalities, that we have to, once we've nailed it down, we will be able to create our own life in that kind of sense. So I think from there, by musicalities to possibly, I'm not sure if that term's even sort of like right, multi-musicalities today. And I love what you present about all of these young musicians to be culture bearers. And I particularly like that you mentioned about all these reflections coming from the people in the community, not only just professors in our recitals hall and all those kind of things. So thank you very much for making 100-year histories really worthwhile following. Thank you very much. And here we'll be hearing from Professor Anant Narkkong about his recent projects with C-Asean and his attempt in a contemporary context of how to encourage all these culture bearers in their music making experience. So I pass this to อาจารย์อนันต์ค่ะขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you อาจารย์ Anothai and สวัสดีครับ Good morning, very very good morning to all our ASEAN friends. I afraid my presentation, my talk will be very much younger experience than what Ajahn Vern informed you about in the School of Music. And this is just 5 years old ensemble music family. And let me share my presentation. I hope it does work with this crazy thing. This is a keynote. Let me play 30 seconds first, a video, and then I will give a talk later on. Does it come?
I'm afraid we can't see the video just yet ค่ะอาจารย์อนันต์คะ I'm afraid we can't see the video just yet ค่ะ
Yeah.
It's okay, we can take a little bit of time ค่ะ
You know, one more time, sorry. Does it come yet?
We can see keynote at the moment. Yes, and yes, we can see it now. Thank you.
All right. My topic will be on consonant of ASEAN music family, and since we have very limitation of time, Ajahn Anothai gave me only 12 to 15 minutes of talking, so I don't know I can really cover everything I want to say or not. But I want to point out at least two, three: tradition and transition. What is it? Why it's so important? And when the transition happen? And where? And who? And how? Ideally, the concept of tradition is an innovated culture or belief or behavior custom that's associated with the past, and it has been evolved and adapt for years. It has to transmit through time, space, and environment, be instituted and maintained by societies and people. And of course, we focus the link of memory and the relationship. And transition, what is it? Transition ideally is all about change, it can be interpreted as bridge, link, passage, connection between 2 points, and we credit to all the process or the period of changing from one condition to another. It can be direct or indirect way of change. It may gradually change or abruptly change, and it's not the end result as important as the process of transition and so on. The idea of the project that I'm going to talk is deal with this area of Southeast Asia, where we have all diversity and complexity of music culture. I don't have much time to share all of this knowledge in detail, but I would like to point out that we see many things that we can relate to each other. There's a lot of similarity and diversity among our musical instruments, and you may know the name and the sound, the way to perform this musical instrument, and you know anyway where they come from. So I don't go into very detailed, as I say that we have very limit of time. And from this similarity and diversity, even when the Western music, European music came to this part of the world, when it's come to the hand of Southeast Asia people, we interpret them into our own way. And then towards the political and economics enforcement of unification of ASEAN Economics Community (AEC) by the end of the year 2015, with the hope that more than 600 million persons would become one. Yet the whole region faced many points of challenging. How can we connect to our past? How can we continue to our future? Imagining the future of the ASEAN community and the conviction that music is the best language of friendship, C-Asean Consonant is a dream that the musical heritage of Southeast Asia might be a unique space where young generation can live together within a different and diverse contexts. I would like to introduce to the firm, the company C-Asean. This is a Bangkok-based social enterprise with greatly support by Thai beverage company. The man who pictured on left hand side, he is the CEO of C-Asean, Kun Thapana Siri Wattanapakdi, who kindly support the initiative of this project happen. I ran very quick to this meeting room in September 2015, when we invite our music expert from 10 countries in ASEAN come together and share our vision, our dream about establishing a new ASEAN ensemble. I don't have much time, but let you see the objective and the discussion among our findings. And at the end, we targeting it must hand our tradition to young generation. We must have ASEAN music lover, also our fan clubs. Whoever will be a music lover, we have to explore on that. And this project should be creative platform of knowledge sharing of ASEAN music. And we look for young people who age under 30. They have to be good personality, I mean good looking, and they should have strong root in their music culture, to be open-minded. They should play more than one instrument, and of course should have a good performance skill and the communication skill and positive thinking and so on. We run a period of music workshop, and you see Ajahn Anothai also involved in this initiative. And this very organic kind of workshop, when we started, we don't know anything about our future, but at the end of this workshop period, we found that yes, this is possible to open a new platform for young generation to develop, to share, to learn, and to preserve the traditional music of ASEAN. And it can be very possible for people who involved in this project, the composer, the ethnomusicologist, the music educator, even the business people, to find out the possibility of enrich the project and the possibility of do all kind of artistic collaboration. And if you want to know more information about this C-Asean Consonant, I suggest we visit the website casean.org. This is the very rough history of ASEAN community, the ASEAN family since they started, and until now we still operate, we still communicate to each other, and we still produce online concert. Even the COVID-19 not permits us for traveling, but we still do a lot of internet exhibition and internet concerting. And this is 10 advisors from 10 ASEAN countries. Also, we have Ajahn LaVerne de la Pena, who represent the Philippines. And other teacher, you already know their face. Maybe you know their detail also. So I will not go into very detail much. And from time to time, we invite, we recruit the young musicians from each country, and they share, they learned their new experience with this project and so on. And we also have a guest artist from many projects that we do journey, do tour concert, and young people of Southeast Asia, include young people of China, the mainland China, also join this. And this is our key conductors, composer, arranger, and guest conductor include also our friend Ki Yong Chong from Malaysia and Chai Jingdong from US to join this. And on the production side, we have a music director side and the management side. I cannot go much into detail, but I just give you this overall thing that in-house we open our music archive to collect the data of musician. We collect music score, program notes, photograph, video, and we also purge. We buy all the ASEAN musical instruments into the office, and this is an example of our manuscript that hold in our archive, and our concert repertoire since the year 2015. Totally 43 songs have been done and very well transcribed and cared by our team. And this is the idea of a musical instrument that we bought into our collection and so on. Let me share the second slide, which is more important. I think I have a few more minutes, but this is too much to say anyway. How to do transition of our traditional music. I would like to point at least 5 ideas. One is respect the tradition, embrace innovation. Secondly, we have to be open-minded for knowledge sharing or cultural sharing. Thirdly, find your voice, finding your ways and use it and do it. Fourthly, knowing audience and use all sort of social engagement. And the sustainable music family is a key to success also. So let me share some of my previous slide, my previous video, sorry, from my brain. So respect tradition. We ASEAN people, we Southeast Asia people, we always do why crew, and we always believe in that power of the guru or the teacher will go to the student, and we believe in the strong root of our music culture. So from time to time, we learn directly from the teacher. Dadang Supriyana from Brunei Darussalam share his knowledge on the Kompang and Hadra tradition to the young ASEAN musician. Next will be this Dike Barat from the Malaysia, when our friend Yasis Zakaria composed a new song. And again, all the Muslim people try to train our young people to familiarize with the Dike Barat. From time to time, we run the project in very long process. The learning from the master to the student directly and communicate to the music family. So I give you the example of this making Ranat concerto, and from the house of Luang Padit Paira, we learned the piece Chert Nok, and we transfer our creativity to the group by use internet. So we're going to give a demonstration of a new Thailand song Chert Nok, which highlight Ranat concerto, and P-Up is with us here. In this music, it depicts the scene of the Monkey King Hanuman, the warrior who see the demon. He's so angry.
Can. 2.
'Knowledge sharing of different culture also very important, and they have to be open-minded to be able to learn how to appreciate each other. Right. even furnished. Also, finding the voice, finding the ways and use your voice, do your way is very challenging. We found that our ancestor, our great grandfather, our great guru, they always find their voice, their ways on improvisation. So why not improvise our music? actually, I should have more example, but I afraid I go over time of Anothai and Harold. So I just very quick do the summarize. Even this sort of idea of sharing and social engagement, and even share to the people who interest in other aspect of music. We should learn from this. And anyway, I want to do my conclusion of okay, this is very very important of the practice of our music family. We share our love, our care, our respect, our trust to each other. We do commitment and we do everything with responsibility, even to our own culture. And we really hope and the future of ASEAN music will grow with the young people. Unfortunately, I could not really go into every detail, but at least the 5 short years of experience, we hope that we can do contribute to both ASEAN music and music education of this part of the world, and to create ASEAN music community. It's a tough project, and we thanks again to C-Asean, the company, and Thai Beverage, who always support our dream. And this is a working in progress. We still finding the right voice. We still finding the right direction of music going. Still finding the right administrative system and finding the right sustainability. So thank you so much for give me a time to share this. Thank you อาจารย์Anothai ครับ
Thank you, Anant, and thank you. Don't worry at all about time. I think as a musicians, sometimes we enjoy using time in a very good way. So thank you for sharing such a wonderful and positive energies to anyone who's doing music in different genres at the moment. And what I love about your project, C-Asean, which I'm very proud to be a part of at the beginning, and I learned a lot from working with you and Professor Van here as well. And I think what I like is that you actually coming on different perspectives. So you're working outside of institutions, and you're working beyond the ideas of what an institute of music can mean, and you really concentrate a lot on the ideas of communicating to the wider audience, and even to get the funding from the private company in making this happen. So congratulations, that's really wonderful. And thank you for sharing with us the 5 mantras, I would like to say, like the respect traditions and find your voice, to knowing your audience is sustainable. So I think that's something that we should kind of like pray it as our mantra as musicians of nowadays. And thank you also for sharing the ideas of respect the tradition, embracing an innovation. This is almost something that every music school should have as a plague when you enter the building, and we should see this when we enter in some way. So thank you very much for sharing that. And also thank you for actually, because of Ajahn Anant, many things that happens relating to traditional music and its development, the tradition in transition has happened because he initiated it. And the next projects I'm just about to share with you is also one of the branch from Professor Anant Narkkong as well. And here, if I can share with you briefly, our recent project. So Ajahn Anant already mentioned Professor Van is talking about what institutions can do within their own realm, and Ajahn Anant mentioned about what we can do outside of institutions in considerations of our audiences. And also we just have one question from our audience, Professor Auguste, asking whether would Ajahn Anant will welcome ugly sound in his ensembles at all. And yes, and this might sort of like giving you a glimpse of the answers. So I'll be sharing you just a little bit about the ASEAN Youth Ensemble at PGM International Symposium, which I'm now help managing it. Just a few things first. If you haven't known anything about the PGM, we are very new schools. We only established in 2013. And you can say we are located in Bangkok, and we have a status of the public universities, and we have very small numbers of students, which is less than 120, and only one program of master in music. And we all have like three generations of students that graduated, two program, bachelor and masters. And if you hadn't know about the name of our founders, Princess Kalayani Watana, who's the sister of our former King Rama IX, and she's a big sponsor of our classical music in Thailand. And as you can see, that these are our approaches as the Conservatory of Music, focusing on classical music. So you might think, okay, so if you are a head of institutions who their focus is more about the classical music, so you might consider wondering, like, what can you do about all this traditional music? Is the by musicalities and answers, or how would you approach it? And if you don't have your kind of like major in traditional music in your own schools, and we are exactly like that. So what we did is that we have, even though we kind of focus on that, but we also have our ASEAN Music International context. So we are looking from another perspective. And this is our yearly event, which is the PGM International Symposium. This is a place where we have keynote presentations, panel discussion, paper presentations, workshop, performance, and exhibition. So some of you might have already kind of like been part of us, be a guest to us as well. Professor Joseph Foreman had, Professor Van was here. So these are kind of some of the few activities, and you possibly see that already that the theme that we have for each year is like we're starting with the idea of classical music in ASEAN, and it's kind of sort of like a discussion with the local cultures, going up to the ASEAN classical music in global context. And then in 2016, we started with the ideas of music and socio-cultural development of ASEAN. And then we go on about the ideas of music and myth and realities, music and metamorphosis, music matters. And it's a virtual realm. That was something that happened last year. And we had a whole series of events happen online, and likely this year again. So this is how it looks like when we all can be together in the same room. And that was from 2014. So you can see that in some way, the ideas of the symposium itself, it looks almost like a musical laboratory. This is a place that we all can meet. And this is where AYE, or ASEAN Youth Ensemble, started in 2014. With the general support from the Ministry of Culture, Thai government, they have give us the funding to bring musicians, a classical musician from around Southeast Asia, and then working together in a kind of like orchestral format, and to playing all these kind of things, as Professor Van said at the beginning, all this folk tune, and playing with Western classical music. And that was in 2014, conducted by Ajahn Wanit Potawanit, Silpathorn artist of Thailand. And then in 2015, we repeat exactly the same process. And this time we brought in more people actually, and it's conducted by our dean, Dr. Consonant Anant. And you can see that we're still exploring, like, if we want to work with the folk music, how can we do that? And then things changed a little bit when we come to 2016, where the theme of the symposium became music and socio-cultural development of ASEAN. And we start thinking that maybe it's not enough just to have a kind of like classical music coming together, and maybe we're neglecting something very important here. So that's why when we start to invite, instead of like two classical musicians to come together, when we invite one local artist together, traditional musicians, and also like classical musicians to come together. And as Ajahn Anant said, that we always start with the ideas of knowledge sharing. And here you can say that instead of just kind of like performing music, we share what we know about our instruments. And you can see that this has happened because of Thai Consonant from the Yongsu Conservatory of Music. He came and conduct an improvisation sessions. So this is possibly really a very organic way to learn about music in this area. And you can see that we combine different types of flutes, and including the Western classical flute, in learning the same music, and sort of like making all this dialogue. So this is kind of our approach in 2016. And then in 2017, we start to have all these core performers, where each of the applicants has to send in what they know and explanations about their work, about their own music, what they can do with their own musical instruments. And this became a kind of call for performers. And this time we have a little bit of help from the Goethe Institute in Germany in bringing together with us Ensemble Musikfabrik, Studio Musikfabrik, and the conductors to kind of like help us to combine classical instrument together with traditional instruments. And you can see that these are sort of like our very first meeting. You can see some of the family faces from C-Asean Consonant. So you can see that all this sustainable family are all connected in some way. And you can see that a lot of mentors in the C-Asean is also part of our mentors for AYE as well. So you can see these are the dialogues that happen. You can see how these musicians are working together. And beyond that, we also asked that new compositions should be written for this ensemble and exploring all these possibilities as well. So you can see that it's already combined Western classical with traditional musical instruments here. And you can see that even the way we always encourage our young composers to conduct. And we have this Korean composer from SNU who joined us and decided to dance instead of conducting. So there's all this very organic dialogue, and you can see the energies that happen with all these players. And over the years, we have included already 42 artists, performers, and composers. And we have already commissioned 36 compositions, original composition for these ensembles. And you can see that the style varies. We really are musical laboratories, and we welcome all contemporary scores, or it can be some of them kind of arrangement and all this kind of thing. So you can see that these are things that happen during the last few years. Every time when we have the symposium, and AYE is always run together with this. And then in 2020, when we weren't able to actually come together, rehearse, and create a new piece, what we did is that we invited 11 of our former participants to join us. And what we did is that we actually created a kind of like a knowledge resources of if you want to know about these instruments, if you want to write about these instruments, and we pair between the composers and the performers together. And during the commissions of creating a new work, they have to discover the way how to notate and the way how to make new sounds. And you can imagine how composers are pushing limits for all of our performers, including new materials into their instruments, finding new ways of making sounds. And this is now available on our website, aye.pgm.ac.th. You can go and have a look. And we have 11 articles, audio visuals articles that you can look through. And we are now working on the ebook as well. So that should be coming up in mid-May or beginning of June. And following these ideas, we will again have in 2021 Tradition in Transitions, the International Symposium, which we will also have these ASEAN Youth Ensemble happen as well. So keep on the lookout, and we'll be having more of the programs and sharing of this knowledge, and I think the most important thing is to get all these young people together and learning from them. I have to say that during all the sessions that I've been involved in the workshop is such an amazing learning experience for me, and I really learn a lot every time that I listen to them. So I think it's really making the family grows. And the next part, which I will hand it on to Professor Van de la Pena, the Southeast Asian Music Sessions, which is now we introduce as a part in partnership with the PGM International Symposium. So back to you, Varen. Thank you.
Thank you, Anothai. So I'll share screen from my end.
Please,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so I was tasked to talk about the Southeast Asian Music Sessions, or SEAMS. This is a new series of events organized by the PGVI and the Princess Galiani Institute of Music, which will feature various groups from all over the region. So Southeast Asian Music Sessions, or SEAMS, somehow talks about how we come together and suit and connect, sew together all these various expressions. It's a monthly informal online gathering of selected artists in Southeast Asia. And the sessions might either be pre-recorded concerts, or it might be a spotlighting on specific areas of the tradition, or it could be a very informal exchange and discussion among fellow artists. It's intended to provide a platform for young performers to promote their music and enable them to reach new audiences, and provide a venue that stimulates a healthy dialogue and exchange of ideas among young musicians in the region. Otherwise, they would not have a chance in the regular venues like social media or the traditional media to perform or to bring their art. So this is a way for them, a way to encourage them and also to bring them to their peers. So the first offering will be on May 15 at 6 to 7:30. That's Thailand time. And the first feature will be a young group from the Philippines called Yon. And so we intentionally placed as our last speaker this morning Mr. Harold Santos, who is one of the founding members of Yon, to talk about their ensemble, and it's in a way also a preview of the Southeast Asian music sessions. So thank you. Can I turn it over now to Anothai or to Harold?
Yes, I can direct it to Harold. So please, let's hear from the one who will make the transitions. So please, Harold, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good day to you all, for everyone who is viewing. And thank you, Professor Vern, Professor Anant, and Dr. Anothai. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for allowing me and giving me the opportunity to talk about my group and to talk about what our generation is trying to do and trying to attempt, and what our generation is really advocating for in terms of transitioning traditional music. My part will be short. As Dr. Vern said, I will just be sharing a preview of what May 15 will be, and I hope we will see you all there, and I hope that you would ask questions and we could get dialogue and we could get discussions regarding the music that we do. I'd also like to share that I am a student of Dr. Vern, and I've had the honor of also being advised by Ajahn Anothai and Ajahn Anant regarding these. So you would say that they're really very responsible in the transition that we're talking about here. Without their guidance and without their blessing, I would use the word blessing. Without their blessing, we would not have maybe the temerity to do all of these kinds of new music here. So my part will be short. I will be showing two videos, very short, about a teaser, I would say, of SEAM's May 15. So let me just share screen here, and I hope you enjoy, and I will wait for the many, many questions that you would have. Thank you.
A wonderful day to you all. My name is Harold Andre, and I am one of the members of Yon. In case you're wondering what Yon is a Manila-based quartet of crazy Asian music graduates with an insatiable hunger for new musical possibilities. Yon is also a Filipino colloquial expression that roughly translates to spot on. And Yon is also the Japanese word for four. Okay, so real quick, the four of us met each other in the Asian music program of the UP College of Music. It was there where we honed our skills in performing Asian traditional instruments. It was also there when we would procrastinate on our school requirements by performing on lots of gigs. Back then, the four of us were members of the performing group UP Tugma with our advisor, Dr. Vern. But back in 2017, realizing that we would all eventually graduate, we formed Yon to continue our crazy music adventures. So now let me introduce the band. Jack Dufort is the session musician. He's a talented percussionist and singer. He's affiliated with several bands of various genres. His main musical influence comes from his father's training in Afro-Cuban and Afro-Brazilian music. Daniel Roy Kalingasan grew up in a musical family. He studied Banduria under Miss Elaine Espejo Cajuco. After finishing the program, he went on to perform within groups that not only celebrate tradition but also explore new musical possibilities. Groups such as Padayan Rondalia and Yon. Julia Eunice Yabes is an Asian music graduate. She studied several instruments including the Maguindanao Kulintang under Master Aga Mayo Butokan. Currently, she teaches music to students in elementary and secondary levels. Harold Andre Santos is an Asian music and musicology graduate. Apart from his performer life, he also composes music for film, theater, and contemporary dance. Today, we would like to give you a quick preview of what our group is all about. We'd like to show you our own honest and hopefully modest journey of trying to bridge tradition and innovation within Asian music. On May 15, 2021, we will have a session for an hour or more wherein the four of us will talk about our group and we will show you the music that we've created thus far. But for now, since our time is only short, we are still proud to show you at least one song. This is our latest recording, a Yon arrangement of a famous song by the OPM band Ben and Ben. This is actually one of my personal favorite Ben and Ben songs. Not that anyone's asking. The title of this song is Suse, or Key. In this video, we celebrate the beauty of the song's lyrics and arrangement. And also, we like to showcase the many instruments that we can play. We released this video last month on March 15, 2021, exactly 1 year since the COVID lockdown. We hope this video gives you hope in these trying times.
Okay. Oh, wait, hold on. I hope you enjoyed that. And that was our honest and hopefully modest content. So first things first, I would like to thank, if anyone from Ben and Ben, the band, is watching, I would like to thank for your permission in allowing us to using your song and to cover it. And also, as you can see, the members of Yon, Dan Kalingasan, Julia Yabes, Jack Dufort, everyone was a student of the Asian music program, and all four of us have our own experiences of Asian and ASEAN ensembles, such as AYE, One Asia. Jack Dufort even did a Bangkok New Year thing with Ajahn Anant. So all of our experiences from 2010 onward, since we came from the college, have led up to what we would, or what Yon is, what the sound of Yon is. And one of our advocacies in Yon is to actually have that transition. So perhaps one of our general rule, just as a band, I'm not saying that this is like dogma for everyone. As a band, we like to use Asian and ASEAN instruments idiomatically, how they would sound and how they would actually be tuned, how they would actually be played in the tradition, and try to use that with new music. So maybe our how we would judge it is, would kids enjoy this, and would the older people from the tradition enjoy this? Because a lot of people, a lot of music we see use the instruments and then change the tuning. I'm not saying that's wrong. Maybe that's not just what Yon would like. Also, we chose that song because it's a more popular, more mainstream song. I know it's very pop, but we also have a lot of academic sounding and other kinds of music that you would see in May 15. But we chose that song mainly for two reasons. It's an amazing song. It has beautiful lyrics. If you understand Filipino, it's just all the more amazing. I don't think the English caption did justice to the Filipino lyrics. And also, it's a mainstream song in 5/8. I don't know about any of your other countries, but in the Philippines, we don't really get to hear anything in 5/8. So that's a surprise, and I would like to share that music all to the greater public. And when I first heard that on the radio, what? That's 5/8. That's impossible. This is a pop song. So it really got me excited, and plus the song became a soundtrack for a very famous film here in the Philippines. I just wanted to honor that song, and we are very lucky that we have 4 crazy. I have equally 3 crazy members with me, and with the help of Dave Kalingasan and everyone else from videography and the editing, I think we did a pretty good job, hopefully. And so yeah, if the May 15 session is all about this, all about the music that we're trying to transition, and all about the music that we've created. All of us are past members of Tugma. All of us are students of Asian music in the UP College of Music. And now that we're graduates, what do we do with this kind of information, and how do we now create authentically? Let me just talk about a small anecdote here. When I was freshman and sophomore in the college, the talk of the town in the campus was all about authenticity. I don't know if that was something really, if anyone actually planned for that to happen, but when I came into the college, everyone, the seniors, some of the professors were talking about that. Is your kulintang playing authentic? Is your costume authentic when the performance comes? And then that was all of the ramblings on that I'd had back then when I was freshman. But then along came this, probably an older person in the college this person told me that everyone is authentic to their own context. And that really shone light to me, that I don't have to pretend to be someone from Mindanao or someone from Japan, because at the end of the day, I am a Santos, and that's like the most Spanish name that I have. And at the end of the day, I'm a Harold, and my first name is the quintessential American uncle, Harold. So yeah, I think that's just one of the advocacies of Yon, to just really find ourselves in the music and just try to be honest and try to be modest in whatever we do. And I hope I would see you in May 15, so you would get to celebrate the music of Yon with us. Thank you again for my mentors, Ajahn Anothai, Ajahn Anant, and Dr. Vern. That's the end of my session.
Thank you. I think you did wonderful work. And thank you for sharing with us those anecdotes. I think we're all facing the same questions. I think every generation, when we try to find our own voice, do it our own way, that's always a question we ask ourselves. And in your case, I think you asked and answer it beautifully. And you've made us feel that maybe we should stop talking and just keep listening to whatever you want to present to us. So thank you for that wonderful video of presentations, and also that really, like, you made my morning for your from your music. So thank you very much. Thank you. And now we have exactly like 30 minutes for Q&A sessions. And here, if it's possible, if I can invite our family members, start calling you guys now, to ask or share your thoughts on this. And may I invite first, I guess that was Augusta, right? Yeah, Augusta, about the music notation. So if you can turn on your mic and join us in the discussions, that would be wonderful. Please, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I think when I did my research also here in Indonesia, I also found tensions between, this is also true when the conservatory was established in Indonesia, a music conservatory. And then I think at the first time they started to introduce musical notation to traditional musicians, and there was a like tension because they I think maybe I think the last I'm not sure, but it used to be that musical traditional musicians, they learned you know, like using like rote, so they try to learn from yeah, it is transmitted through what do you call, it's not using musical notations but rote. Then I think the problem was because every time they learn and then they forgot to remember what they have learned before. So then to make it easy or to ease the problems, then they introduce musical notations. But again, that I think that was I observe here. There was a tension because some of the musical traditional musicians just told me that using musical notation is a Western legacy, and they just do not want to use musical notation because it's also not authentic. Yeah, I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Agastya. Is there anything you would like to respond to, Van and Ajahn Anant? Or possibly even Harold, how did you make that 5/8 happen with or without notation, and how did you approach it? So please go ahead. So let's do the answer round.
Okay. Well, definitely there's notation going on, but it's very difficult because we cannot lie to ourselves. We were educated in the college and we have to study theory, have to read notes, and have to, you know, do solfege and dictation and whatever. But that's the thing. I guess it goes both ways. One thing that I think is very important is listening materials, recorded materials. And that's just my opinion. When I was studying Kulintang, the lack of recorded materials was really daunting because there are so little examples. I don't mean to say that there are no examples, but if you compare that to, say, someone learning jazz guitar for the first time, there are thousands and thousands of examples of just one song, right? And the notation isn't even precise. It's just a real book, a lead sheet, but everyone keeps on learning giant steps because there are thousands of recording of that same song. And the thing is with Kulintang, we only have a teacher, or we only have only so much listenings, I think. And the notation, I don't really want to talk about notation if it's good or bad because I don't know yet. I'm young. I don't know the implications and I don't know the repercussions of having it notated. But definitely, I would agree that notation helps, but notation isn't the only answer because, yeah, definitely it would have, it would become more westernized if you notate it.
May I respond? Thank you very much. Very interesting question, Agastya. Did I say that right? Okay.
Yeah.
One of the misconceptions that 400 years of colonialism brought to us is that literacy is a higher order kind of thinking than orality. And we know better than that. We know better now, of course, and we're fighting that misconception the way we can. Now, as far as notation is concerned, it is a tool. It is a tool that it is at our dispense that we can use to learn whatever we want to learn deeper and better. It's a kind of transcription, transcribe, meaning it's not the real thing. You really listen, you can also listen to recordings, but the recordings are also not the real thing. So the recordings are like notations as well. They're a tool. So we use it as a tool to approach reality, the reality of traditional music, the best way we can in the realities of today, of the university setting. However, we are very careful not to say that this is supreme, higher than the traditional practice of orality. If I may give you also a story, because there are two streams now of learning Kulintang. There's a stream of learning Kulintang through the Philippine universities in UP. And that's another stream that is also in America being taught by being learned by Filipino Americans there. And there somehow they shunned notation. And there was a time when they encountered learning that's going on in UP and said, that is not authentic music. You're reading from a score. How could that be Kulintang music? But of course, for us, like I said, it's a tool. In actual practice, in the practice of Professor Agamayo Butokan, it's a way of introducing the Filipino kids, the students, to the music, to the very basic music. But as the learning advances for more advanced students, then the score is dropped and it becomes really more authentic in a way. It's improvisation the way it is practiced in the community. And I guess with that answer, I also addressed one of the questions I saw on the chat, which is improvisation. So we begin by strictly, very basic, and towards the more advanced students, then you begin to drop the score, and then you perform it the way it is practiced in the community. The same thing is true with innovation. We want the students to strictly comply, respect the culture first, study the discipline as strict as possible, and only later on are you allowed. So, for example, the Asian music majors have 2 recitals. They have the junior recital, which they have to somehow exhibit their knowledge of the tradition, how they absorb the discipline, the way it is approached somehow by traditional masters. And the second recital, the senior recital, they are allowed to innovate, to do fusion stuff and all that things. So I hope that enlightened Agastya. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, may I?
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks. To respond to Agastya's question about notation, since I work with the music family that our younger generation, some of them not really come from music school. Some of them even never experienced Western notation before, but they live happily with the musician who very master in reading notation like a piece of cake. I would like to point that to be able to work together in the ensemble like C-Asean Consonant, which we all live in different countries and different conditions. Maybe notation is good for kind of communication tools. So we send them a score, we send them all learning materials to prepare themselves before coming. And we have very short time. Every time we have concert or even tour concert, to finalize, to really do perfect thing. But at least the notation can be very good guideline for working together. And in terms of management, of course, we have to be very flexible with notation. The girls who cannot read at all notation, we have to find a way. If not score notation, not the standard notation, have to find their own language and notate by herself and to communicate with other people in the group. And if you notice, I put one of my presentation about archiving. I always think of how to handle this to the next generation. Notation can be very good historical documentation. So when you create new thing from the even old tradition, and even you improvise, I always ask my assistant Ajahn Om to transcribe what Niranjan improvised on his Indian flute, what Sintawong improvised on his can, what Ling improvised on her danbao, and put everything into visible notation form. And Om is always do a great job behind the scene, and we put this as an investment for the future generation. Maybe they are musicologists, maybe there will be some young composer want to understand more about the working of C-Asean consonant. So this is the matter of historical documentation. But of course, to be able to read or not to read notation, or it's correct or not correct, if you really play the music with the heartful feeling, the true feeling of your positive feeling of your music making, and real understand of music, what are you doing, we don't care is it right or wrong notation. And even you can do more creative contribution to the written notation. We really salute to you, the musician. So thanks for this.
Thank you, Ajahn Anant, Harold, and Professor Van. I think if I can share a little bit from the AYE perspective, I guess like what Professor Van mentioned earlier, this dichotomy between literacy and orality, and we always stuck with the idea that notation is something that is frozen in time. But actually, from my experience learning from these young people in the AYE, notation grows as well as music and musicians as well. So that possibly is something that we can look for, the way that notation is not just something of archaeological objects that froze in time, and we can, if we can see it grows, and we should encourage its growth as well. So maybe if I can direct maybe to the second questions by Professor Midiana Unsung to, and this is directed to Professor Van. She said, like, if I can invite you to join us. Midiana, yes, please. Yes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Medi. Can you hear my
yes.
voice?
Yes, we can, please.
Okay. I'm asking about in this day about folk song. How how it become right now? Is it become a new media, or it become different, or any kind that it's expressed as people singing folk song? Similar in Indonesia, folk song become popular right now in choir, and mostly in competition. They are very eager to join category in folk. So thank you for the response.
So please, Wan.
Okay, thank you, Mehdi. Um,
Yes.
there was a time in our search for our identity, and it happens also in the West, where we thought of folk arts, folk music as raw, and that it would take the learned artist uh, to refine this somehow. So we're beyond that now. We try to find out how it is performed in context, what meanings that they actually carry. Many of the meanings have been lost, and we just focus then on melody or rhythm and all. But the meanings that actually embedded in it for the people in the community, in the culture. Um, having said that, there's also the reality of the need to present folk material in new audiences, whereby you cannot bring with you the traditional context, the traditional environment where it was originally performed. And so there's a need to recontextualize the performance, the material for the new audiences. But recontextualization should be based somehow on informed knowledge of the practice. So it's not a free for all, do whatever you can because it sounds good. But for us, at least find out about the culture, and that's a way of respecting them. Sorry about my auto. My
It's
camera is.
readjusting. I think you're readjusting also.
Right. There's
physically,
no
so that's
earthquake.
wonderful.
There's no earthquake ongoing here. So sorry about. I think my room is too dark. That's why the camera is. So I hope I answered that, Mehdi.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very eager about the choir in Philippines. So I think there are many pieces based on folk song, and I think that's very enriching. And how about how do you think about that?
Yes, the choir is one of the richest, platform for us to perform these traditional things. And it so happens that to us, the choir is the most practical type of performance, most practical group that we can form wherever we are. Of course, it doesn't need instruments that you have to buy. It doesn't need very long soloistic training. You gather people who can sing, and then you do workshops and so on. And the nice thing about folk songs is that each of these choirs from all over the islands would have a resource in their own backyard. So um, um, that becomes their source of inspiration for this new repertoire, choral repertoire. Of course, when you write for choir, then you also have to understand the specific medium. So there are conventions for writing in choirs that somehow uh, would affect the original, the folk material as well. So that's just natural, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe if I can go next to the next questions, because we have around like 10 minutes left. There's another questions by Anna. Do you mind to put your microphones on and we can hear your questions? Thank you. Thank you, Midiana. Thank you for the questions. And hopefully this can continue to rediscover in the future, refocus in the future. Thank you. And Anna? Hello. Okay. In that case, if I can ask the questions for you, she was asking perhaps this realization observation should be taken into account in reminding Southeast Asian music universities, college, that systematic pedagogy of music start with an interest in the folk. Would any of our panelists can respond to this? And I would like to invite also our president, Professor Bernard Lansky, to also join us into this discussion as well. Thank you. So who would like to go first? Can I direct it to you, Bernard?
Yes,
Thank
sure.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's a great question. I mean,
yes.
I think one of the biggest challenges that colonialization is responsible for is perhaps the misrepresentation of its own identity as well. That actually, obviously, all of our music comes through all of our folk, and there's a way in which I would argue that the notation was actually just a way of creating that bridge. And I loved Vern's point about the transcription, to get beyond the script to getting back into that energy and making it flow into the future. It was really, so that concept that Anant brought of bridge, and that we do need to go back to this idea that almost from the voice, and as Vern was just saying, the idea that, in the end, that we sing together is perhaps our most natural resource. And in that sense, we do, the question's absolutely right, that we have to go back to the folk in everything we do. In every moment we make music, it's freshly now drawn from the truths of our collective pasts. So all of this stuff I think, the other thing that, the West is great at doing is dividing things into different silos, and therefore we've got all these genre things and so on. And I loved that point that Harold made about authenticity, that actually authenticity ultimately becomes our identity. How do we make our identity authentic? But if we're authentic to our identity, we also draw from our pasts. So, but what's so beautiful about Southeast Asia is it's like a collective consciousness of the globe at present. And it's wonderful to see what is flowering through that, and through the diversity of our folk, and through some of the curiosities of our contemporary political environments, where we all get collected as a series of nations, and there's so many myths even in the nationhood and in the collection. But that we can take all of that forward, I think is really exciting. And, it's just fantastic to see so many people here this morning with all the collective identities and backgrounds. I've been trying to post something in the chat, but I'm not very gifted on my technology compared to many of you. But there's a book called The Spell of the Sensuous, which actually looks from a written perspective at the balance between orality and literacy, if you like. And I think it's really interesting in how it goes globally. And it's now 20 years plus old, but David Abrams went around, including to Indonesia, including to Bali, I think, to look at this balance between capturing culture through orality and the concept of the spell, which in some ways is magical. We can write something down so that our eyes can help us hear. There's something magic in that. But how to make music that is fresh in the now through all of these connections. So I agree, let's keep keeping it back to the folk, and that's about keeping it as energized as possible. That's my attempt. That's my attempt.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernard. And thank you, Joe, for also putting the link about this book onto the chat as well. So thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Joe.
And maybe if I can also ask the same questions to possibly the only one among us who has the freshest memory about what the experience being in the college. Can I ask the same questions to Harold, please? Thank you.
Okay. Oh my God. This is very hard to answer because I'm not sure about the previous generations before me, but when I was a freshman in the college, I would see my seniors, probably 3 or 4 or 5 years older than me, say that being an Asian music major is always feels like you're some sort of an outsider. Uh, Perhaps I did not feel that anymore. Maybe times are changing, indeed. But yeah, it's actually sad to see my seniors, my senior org members, and my senior classmates to say that. Imagine saying that to a freshman, like you're just entering college, and then you would say to a freshman, "Oh, our program is, you know, you'd feel like an outsider in our program." That kind of sucks, right? Uh, but yeah, I think the difference with my generation is that the professors tended to become more open. I'm not sure how to really compare with that, but the professors, even the composition professors like Dr. Jonas Baez and Dr. Verne and everyone else in among their age range, they actually welcomed uh, us in our crazy antics of trying to fuse things together, even in our recitals that Sir Verne showed the posters of. Dr. Verne welcomed us to create new arrangements and new compositions. And I think that serves as a very important tradition. As for the pedagogy, I don't really know how to comment on this, but all I know is when I was in freshman year, being an Asian music major is kind of difficult when you are classmates with people who studied classical piano right from third grade or something, or violin majors who studied violin since they were 3 years old, and then you would have to go to Western music theory. That kind of leaves us very weak at that end, right? And then you would get to sing solfege, but when but that's a very different experience from our major instrument. So the connection of the music theory and the music literature, where we're learning Bach and Beethoven and everyone else and Palestrina, does not link to what we're learning in major with Kulintang or Cordillera. So I'm not sure how it's being adjusted now, but I think that's a very good thing to look at. Does that make sense?
Amazing. Okay, we should definitely continue the discussions on and on, but I know that we are a bit limited on time. So if I can just wrap to the last questions and direct this to Ajahn Anant very quickly about the effect of technology in all these tradition in transitions. What do you think of it? I think, Harold, you already answered that with your own work, and maybe I direct this to Ajahn Anant. Thank you. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Oh my. Okay, maybe I will answer from my perspective as an ethnomusicologist. The subject of my knowledge, my field, also Ajahn Verne's and Harold's experience. The birth of ethnomusicology always come from technology. Without transportation, you will not be able to reach the the community or the tribe or the ethnic people and do record them. Okay, the technology of make the recordings from ancient time until this modern period, we always depends on recording technology and also filming, do all the documentation. We need technology to preserve the tradition, and beyond that, we communicate to the world outside with technology. We export our finding on the television, on the movie house, or even this website, online platform. Is always tradition needs technology. Sometimes people are afraid that the technology may do harms to the tradition, but I don't think that way. If we know how to use, we know how to really support the beauty of technology, of the tradition with positive thinking of technology. I think we always find a way, and it can be a very good resource for transition to the next generation as a way you find from our experience. Sorry, my brain is not very functioning.
May I add to that,
Yes,
Dr.
please.
Anothai?
Please,
I would
please.
argue that technology is an inherent part of music making. That if there was no technology, music would not have developed in human civilization. Instruments are there because of technology. We couldn't have had the great gamelan, the great gongs of Southeast Asia had not metallurgy been discovered and developed in the region. So technology is there from the start, but technology doesn't stand by itself in music making, right? You have to combine that with knowledge and tradition and meanings and symbolisms and all that. So you have the software part and the hardware part. So some people are just more focused on the hardware section and not necessarily the software part. So it's a process of finding the balance, or probably what is a good mixture for a certain context. It so happens now in our context of the pandemic and lockdowns that we somehow benefit from the technology, this technology that we're using now, right? And so we are able to make the best of a very bad situation. So that's it.
Very, very sad that the session is about to end now. It's a lot of wonderful questions that are still on the list. So I would like to invite you that if you want to hear more from Jan and Harold, please come and join us on the 15th of May at 6 p.m. Bangkok time. And if you want to hear more from these young transitions makers, I would say, please join us also in the next event with SEADOM on the 14th of August, titled 30 Under 30. With Huiling and myself, and possibly one more guest. And if you would like to know more, I know that we have left behind one question to all these speakers about the discussion of what is the future of tradition in transitions. So I would like to also invite you to join us in the PGM International Symposium, which will happen on the 23rd to 27th of August. We still do a call for paper online at the moment. And please also stay on the 28th for the SEADOM annual meeting as well. So thank you very, very much for SEADOM for making this happen. Thank you, Professor Bernard Lansky, Dr. Joseph Bowen, also Dr. Phomon Pan, and also the SEADOM team. So thank you and have a very good lunch. Thank you. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you, Anothai. Thank you all. Fantastic.